Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Extra Serving, a restaurant industry podcast, a product of Nation's Restaurant News and Restaurant Hospitality. I'm your host, Holly Petre, and now it's time to introduce my two lovely co-hosts.
My name is Sam Oches, Editor-in-Chief of Nation's Restaurant News.
And I am Joanna Fantozzi, Senior Editor with Nation's Restaurant News.
Joanna and I are here together in person.
We are indeed.
I feel so left out that I'm the lonesome one here in my cozy little bedroom. I feel like we have a misbranding opportunity here, which is directly behind you, Holly, is our corporate logo, and you've just completely blocked it. So for all those who are watching, it just looks like you're in a generic office.
The logo is me. What are you talking about? The logo is my face.
Holly, the face of a global company.
Mm-hmm. Obviously. Well, Joanna and I are in person because we're shooting some great video content that's going to be coming out.
We should talk more about our video because I think we've been creating great video and we've been putting it up on YouTube. But for those who are listening right now and who have not seen our video, Holly and Joanna, can you please tell us a little bit more about our video strategy?
Yeah, so we are shooting something called Tech Tracker today. I'm sure you've seen a few tech trackers come out. Joanna actually writes this column called Tech Tracker that's all about the new technology advancements in the restaurant scene. As Sam eats his cinnamon roll.
Hungry. This is why I set it up for you to talk.
I'm still going to point it out. But we're making it a video series now. And so we are going to drop weekly videos of technology related news that Joanna and I are going to talk about. So you're going to see these really cool videos. They're really nice to look at, let me tell you.
You know who loves to do videos? Joanna. Joanna loves to be on these videos, don't you, Joanna?
Wait, are you being sarcastic?
No, you're really, really good on the videos, but I feel like we've had to drag you just a little bit.
It's not. I mean, I come from just like a writing and reporting background, kind of more behind the scenes person, but I'm getting more used to it. Thanks for calling me out, though. Much appreciated.
I said you do a really, really good job. You really do. I'm just saying,
does.
You were a little reluctant, but I think you're enjoying it now.
I think it's a good opportunity to kind of like have a more, I guess, casual conversation about what I read about in kind of a more formal style and kind of more analysis of what's going on in the tech world, from NFTs to robots. Those tend to be NFTs / the metaverse, and robots tend to be like the top two things to talk about.
We actually just did a tech tracker video on robots
today.
Yeah, we just did a tech tracker video on robots. So go check that out at nrn.com /tech-tracker, and you'll see it right there. Very easy URL.
Also, we are also doing videos of our travels, which Holly and I were in Austin recently and did a little recap of our travels there. We'll do more of that. Point is, if you enjoy the podcast and hearing us talk, you might also like to see us talk on YouTube. So go to YouTube, Nation's Restaurant News, our YouTube page, and subscribe because we're going to be cranking those out a lot more.
Yes, our podcast is also a video podcast, and we do it every single week. So you can watch us talk or eat, in Sam's case, every week.
Who doesn't want to watch me eat? I'm at least a polite eater. You know those people who are like, they chomp their mouth open. It's just like awful to watch. I am at least a polite eater.
Well, influencers, I feel like food influencers do say sometimes that people like to see that. Like I quasi know a food Instagrammer person, and he said that like he kind of does that on purpose, like takes like the big bite of the burger, like kind of thing, because people, I don't know, like to see that anyway. But enough about us. Let's talk about what's going on in the world.
That was a good chance for me to take a bite. Anyway, I was thinking, how gross do I make this? But I apologize to anybody who's watching right now.
No, I will say that there is definitely a good food shot of Sam taking a real meaty bite of a Hop Dottie burger in our Austin video. So if you want to see a real big bite of a burger, definitely go check out our 5 emerging concepts in Austin video.
It was also the only bite of that burger I took. I know this is love Hop Dottie, but that was our third stop, and I wasn't very hungry, so it was a good burger. Just I couldn't fit any more physically into my body.
Yes, I'm going to Boston in 2 weeks. And so if you have any recommendations of Boston-based chains, you can email me at holly.petre@informa.com. So if you own a Boston-based chain, if you know of a Boston-based chain, feel free to email me because I will be there and I will be doing the same kind of video tour. So getting my stomach ready for it as we speak.
And we define chain as 2 and above. So you don't have to have 1,000 locations
No,
be a part of this.
we define chain as 2 and above. So we have a low bar.
Can I do a video series where I eat on camera and talk about technology and call it Bits and Bites with a Y?
Ooh, look at that. The creative process live in front of you. I like it. Okay, sure. Next video series.
I love it. All right. Well, let's talk about the news because I'm next to Joanna's computer and I'm seeing all of her emails flood in and I am just seeing news pop up as it's happening, which is very exciting, I must say. But
live from New York.
Live from New York.
We're not allowed to say that.
Live from New York. It's an update on the RRF.
So this news literally just broke. The Restaurant Revitalization Fund replenishment, $42 billion of aid for restaurants that had initially applied for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund last year, passed in the House. And we just wrote that up. However, we're also now getting news that the Senate is not going to vote on it, which is what happened, I think, the first time around. I don't know, this bill versions of this bill have been bandied back and forth for the past 6 months to a year, about a year now. And so, yes, the Senate, we're getting news that the Senate is not going to vote on it until after the April recess, which might have to do with the fact that they are voting to confirm today Judge Jackson. I'm wondering if that might be why. But yes.
Yeah, it's and while it might seem inconsequential, when you blow this out to the national stage and how many businesses are struggling, that's the difference between open and close for a lot of restaurants. And so, it might be easy to not take into full account the severity of all this just because this is such a national thing and you hear, a couple restaurants, 100 restaurants, whatever, close. But yeah, I mean, remember that it's people's livelihood, it's people's jobs, it's people's dreams that are going away. So positive that this is actually does have momentum. You wish you could see something happen maybe a little bit more quickly. But yeah, certainly going to be tough for some of those restaurants that are on the edge right now.
Yeah. And this $42 billion would be enough, they say, to cover every single restaurant that initially applied that didn't get it. So that's 2/3 of the, I did not memorize the number, but a lot of restaurants.
It's 2/3 of a lot of restaurants.
I know, it's very
2/3 of a lot. Yep.
2/3 of a lot. Well, wasn't there some number that came out that like 10,000 restaurants closed at the beginning of the pandemic? Like it was something wild that was, that a lot of closed because of this pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, the numbers, it's interesting because at the very beginning of the pandemic, there was lots of speculation about how many would close. And there were some truly insane numbers thrown about. Like, I mean, some groups were saying that like 75% of independent restaurants could close or something like that. And it was way not the case. It was, I want to say in the first year, it was like 14% of restaurants closed, something like that, or in calendar 2020, something along those lines. Now, again, to what I just said a bit before, that might sound like not a lot, but when you blow that out to an industry with nearly 1 million restaurants, that is a ton of restaurants that did close. So anyway, it's a matter of perspective because it is like good that not as many close as we expected, bad that any have to close at all. And so that's what all of this discussion really revolves around is, and there are people on either side, because of course there's a lot of people who don't believe that the RRF or that the government should be stepping in to support these restaurants. Which there's a valid case there, and then there's a valid case that they should. And then I think a lot of it comes back to the mess that was the application process to get these funds. In some ways, this is just trying to clean up the mess it's been all along for all those people who've been waiting and had applied when things truly were really dire. And so I don't know, it's just it's messy, and hopefully people can get the funds they need, and then we can just get to a point where they don't need those funds anymore.
Right. And take this with a grain of salt, because I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly, but I just looked up the April recess. So it seems like today is the last day that Congress will be voting on things. It's kind of a flurry of activity the past few days. And so it does kind of make sense that they're busy with the Jackson confirmation hearing. And they will be returning on, I believe, the 25th or the 26th. So it would be possibly then at the end of the month. So it's not like they're putting it off for forever.
So
Maybe.
fingers crossed.
Maybe. This is all speculation.
Well, something that boomed when restaurants were closed is virtual dining. And so one of our newest pieces of news this week is that Virtual Dining Concepts named a CEO, its first ever. I mean, so do we think that that means that virtual dining is here to stay? The virtual dining concepts, I mean, they had Mr. Beast burgers, they had all of these really large entrances into the world. They had these giant pieces of news. Do we think that this means that they are officially planting their flag and saying, we're here to stay? Virtual dining is going to be the next frontier of dining. It's going to be your next fast casual, your next QSR. Virtual dining is going to be a category.
Yeah, I mean, I think regardless, yes. Virtual dining concepts being one of the leaders here. Robert Earl, as we all know, is a real character, the founder of that company, and was a good leader for the company anyway. I think when, CEO is more symbolic of saying, now we're going to put real structure and strategy to scaling this thing, and somebody besides the face of the company needs to be in charge of, sort of casting a vision for it. And so that's what this represents. But always this category was going to be huge. And now I personally, and, I think a lot of what, the three of us certainly do and our colleagues do in media is we base a lot of sort of the health and success of certain things on how much we're hearing about it, because we can't get out there and see all of this stuff taking place in action. What we do sense is how much are we getting information from the industry about all of this. My personal sense is that the virtual brand trend has cooled just, as people go back out to physical restaurants and want to get out of their house and go have experiences. I've always thought that virtual brands would be more niche just because it's a great idea. It's this great opportunity for operators to maximize their kitchens and have incremental revenue. However, there's always this disconnect where the customer, if you don't know what that restaurant is and you don't have that brick and mortar billboard to really understand what the concept is, there's a disconnect where the customer is not going to create any kind of relationship with that brand. So there will be some customers who are like scrolling through DoorDash and well, that looks good, I'll go with that. But then there's something more like me, myself, I'll say, I order from restaurants that I am familiar with. Even when I do third-party delivery, I'm looking for restaurants that I've had an experience at the restaurant, or I've heard, from friends, word of mouth, that they're good. So to answer your question more succinctly, I would say, yes, this is a category that's here to stay. But my suspicion is that it really does kind of plateau to be sort of a corner of the industry that makes sense, certainly for operators and certainly for a segment of customers, probably not going to become, bigger than any individual brick and mortar category.
I definitely agree. I don't think there's enough room at the virtual table for all of these brands that kind of exploded during the pandemic and were created during the pandemic, because honestly, a lot of them have gotten poor reviews. I'm not going to call anybody out at all. But there have been celebrity backed brands or just ones with a lot of buzz that you actually look at the reviews and it's like, well, I was excited to order food from this celebrity or backed brand, and the food was terrible. So I think that it's going to become like a sink or swim thing. I think that virtual brands do have a place, a very strong place, but I think that they have to create a name and a reputation for themselves of just being a great experience and being good tasting food. It can't just be a gimmick.
Yeah, and to that end, what this news, excuse me, of virtual dining concepts in particular could represent is going in the direction of maturation, right? So like, if virtual brands can mature to a point where, because it was I mean, a lot of this was knee jerk, right? I mean, a lot of the virtual innovation was, oh no, our brick and mortars are closed, or sales are down, or we got to go harder on delivery. You know, virtual brands is this new thing. Let's all jump into the space. There was a lot of just rushing into it because it was a trend, which is probably accounting for why some of the food is not great, because it just wasn't thought through like a brick and mortar restaurant concept would be. So, you know, perhaps if virtual brands can mature to where they take a step back and say, you know, instead of just rushing this all to market for the sake of the marketing element, let's take a second to actually develop some really thought through, delicious food, think through the packaging, because that's a huge piece of this, and then go to market with something that is much more thought through. I think that would have to be the next step for the virtual brand category.
Yeah, one place that, so I was just talking with Alex Cantor of NextBite for an upcoming feature on our website, so stay tuned for that. But I was talking with Alex Cantor, and he was saying that there's a lot of gaming of the system that goes into virtual brands, that there's a lot of ways that you have to think about SEO to get on top of Grubhub or to get on top of DoorDash to get your brand found, and the marketing that comes in terms of it. Then you have to go into, like, the way that they think of brands is they think of what's missing from the market. So they think of what is missing, like, or what's really good to transport. So they think of, like, burritos are really good to transport. So they had a breakfast burrito because that was missing from the market. So, like, things like that are how NextBite at least thinks of their virtual brands. And they try to think of what's missing, and almost like a real restaurant, just without the overhead.
Yep.
And I think that's what a lot of the bigger players are doing. A lot of the people who have come out of this successful and are in the stage of maturation are the brands that have been able to find holes in the market and find ways to market properly. Like Mr. Beast Burgers was marketed incredibly, and it's still held up. It's still, you know, it wasn't just like a blip in the system, it's still going. And so you have to think about these things that are marketed really well, but then also are thought through well, and in addition to it. And there's a lot of those that have been done well, but there's a lot that haven't been done well either. And to Joanna's point, a lot of brands just kind of slapdash thought, I need to be part of the virtual brand. And there's been a lot of issues with the way that brands have been put on platforms and the way that they've maybe lied about being a virtual brand or not being, or being brick and mortar. And there's all those issues as well. But I think that the ones that we're talking about are the big ones, the big players. Like, you know, you think of Denny's having a virtual brand, you think of IHOP having a virtual brand, those kind of big players with these NextBites, with these virtual dining concepts. Those are the ones that, like, are really in the stage of maturation.
We should also add, by the way, that the CEO who was named to Virtual Dining Concepts, her name is Stephanie Sollers. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. But importantly, she came from DoorDash. And so that is going to be critical for them to really understand the ins and outs of how DoorDash and others operate, so that Virtual Dining Concepts can really maximize their business through that platform.
I also love that we're seeing more women in restaurant technology. And not to take Holly's job, but like
segue. Here we go.
To segue that that I am seeing a lot of when I'm researching for a metaverse story, a big metaverse feature, and I'm seeing a lot of the metaverse experts or Web3 experts are women.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, look, and women, excuse me, in leadership of any industry category, whatever, is good to see. I couldn't describe any kind of meaning to why there are a lot of women leaders in Web3, other than to speculate that, you know, hopefully now as a society, we're at this point where we are encouraging young women to pursue whatever career path they want to. And with something that's so new like this, it's going to be more open to women in the workplace, and certainly more diverse and equitable. So perhaps that's the reason why, I don't know, but it's exciting to see regardless.
And so that news that has to deal with the metaverse is that Chipotle has entered the metaverse with a very cool new game. Sorry if you can hear the sound of the rain. We are on the 22nd floor and it is pouring here in New York City.
It's
so
really terrible out.
Can't hear the rain.
Hear the
Sorry.
rain. We are high up and in a storm. So if we are a little scared.
You guys are going left and right. Is the building blowing back and forth?
So Chipotle has entered the metaverse with a really cool game. They're gamifying the metaverse. So they basically want you to create your own burrito, and then it arrives at your door. So it's very, very interesting. I think it's different from how Wendy's entered the metaverse with their own restaurant. And I almost think there's more of a universal appeal to this Chipotle because people love playing games. And Chipotle's kind of dove into the game sphere before. They do like creating games. They like, Wendy's does too. I feel like these two players have really kind of been toggling on and off for positions in the technology field when it comes to games and gamifying their brands. But so Chipotle's game is super interesting. I think it's a great idea personally. What do you guys think?
Oh, just to clarify, unfortunately, we're not quite up to that point. So basically, you create the virtual burrito. It's sort of like it's the store is actually meant to look like a Chipotle from the 90s because it's a nod to their heritage because they opened in the 90s.
93 to be exact.
Yes. And it's supposed to look like an old school Chipotle, and you create your burrito. And if you're one of the first, I forget the number. If you're if you are one of the first, however many participants to create the burrito, then you get a free entree coupon, which you can use at Chipotle on the digital on the website or on the mobile app. But I do think we are creeping closer to that point of ordering food within the metaverse and it arrives at your door. I think that's basically going to happen imminently.
Well, that's what they eventually want the game to be. So
Right.
That's how I'm kind of discussing it, is that their vision.
And all the technology is there to make that happen. This is just, what we're seeing is just baby steps in some ways. Well, I guess in some ways it's jumping in with 2 feet because everybody sees this as the future, and companies like Wendy's and Chipotle are jumping in because they see that potential. But in other ways, it's like also recognizing there's not a lot of people, not a lot of consumers in the metaverse yet. And so, some of it's balancing like the tantalizing things that could become of the metaverse, which stay tuned for the May issue of NRN because Joanna is going to have a really excellent feature about all of that, but also saying like, some of this has to mature, going back to what we were talking about before, to a point where you can do things like order in the metaverse and it arrive at your door. But technology is there. This is a matter of time, and it's a matter of adoption. It's going back to what we've said all along about comparing it to the internet of the 90s. Adoption of the internet took a few years before people all had their own email addresses. It was a difference of like 5 years between when the internet kind of first emerged and then you had the .com boom. Things move faster now, so I expect it to not be 5 years for Web3, but that's what we're seeing, those early stages. And my suggestion to everybody is just find a way to enter one way or another to get involved. You don't have to do a big game, promotion, whatever, like Wendy's and Chipotle are doing, but you should find out how to own your own corner of the metaverse because you're going to have to 5-10 years from now anyway.
And speaking of baby steps, it does seem like the first step is sort of using the metaverse and Web3 as a marketing tool first. So it is basically what Wendy's and Chipotle are doing is sort of marketing tools right now before it becomes like a full-fledged, I guess, experience for loyal fans of these brands which I guess in a way is also a marketing tool. But I think it sort of eventually is going to make the shift from marketing to loyalty, and then it just becomes like a part of your lifestyle. So right now it's just kind of like, hey, cool, I'll play this game. And then in a few years from now, it might be that you get to collect these things online, and then you can order from Chipotle or Wendy's within the metaverse and get cool experiences and things in real life.
Well, that is an awesome way to end. What a cool way to end. Joanna, why don't you tell us about who you interviewed this week? And then we can bid Sam a farewell.
Well, I
permanently.
Yeah.
just have to go run an errand, but yes, I'll be bid farewell.
So I interviewed the new CEO of Wiener Schnitzel, J.R. Gallardi, and we talked about his new position as CEO, his goals for the brand. Actually, we did talk a little bit about NFTs in the metaverse, and just kind of, I guess, what it's like to be in a family-run business, which I feel like those are kind of rare nowadays in terms of for chains.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Joanna, for joining me here in person. It was so nice to have somebody next to me and not just be at home alone. And thank you, Sam. We bid you farewell.
Farewell.